In this exercise, we're going to continue from where we left off in the last quadruped dog video, where of course we set up a walk cycle for our little fella, and we're going to work on breaking that walk cycle out into a run so as we can see transitioning from walk to run, and of course get some practice putting the actual run cycle itself together. So here we go, we'll trot along to our sort of end point where we're coming off the end of our walk cycle, which is there. And it's from here that we're going to begin decelerating him as he's coming into this last part of his walk. So we've got his extension there coming through passing. Let's move him back a little bit, and then of course into his next extension, whereby we'll move him back quite considerably there. So you can see there the actual keys, you see how he's slowing down. We can just watch this in playback, it's more obvious. There you can really see the slowdown starting to happen. Of course, if you were coming out of the walk, if you were wanting to do the standing to walk to stop, this is pretty much how you'd start to transition into your standing again. Very similar sort of thing. So here's what we want to do. We want to start correcting the feet next. So this point where he's contacted, we leave that alone. We're looking at all the feet that come after that. So this one, which is getting ready here to lift up, we're going to take its keyframes here and we're going to grab them and we're going to shift them back in time by 2. So he starts to lift his foot slightly sooner. He'll again also come through his passing pose much sooner and also into his final contact pose much sooner. Now that contact pose is obviously not going to be as far out in front. We're going to bring it in much closer like this. And of course the passing pose will also move backwards in allowance there. I'm going to raise that up like this at this point. Also we're going to take that foot which has landed there, and whilst this one is coming in, we raise that up as well, because now he's getting ready to sort of start to spring forward. Again, what we can see if we look at the pattern of how those feet are falling and how their distance is shortening. Again, that's good if we're wanting to go and bring him to a standstill. Very similar sort of pattern that we would use there. Let's work on bringing these rear feet in now. So that right side rear foot, we're wanting more or less to leave its time and contact point alone. That's fine. We can perhaps move it up just one single frame. So I'll grab it, and also of course it's IK foot there. So that's just coming in a little bit earlier. Then this one of course is going to be lifting off and coming in that bit earlier as well. So let's grab all of the frames for that. Let's move them back 2. And let's move the actual contact point when it lands down 1 here, coming in considerably sooner. And then of course let's bring its distance down differently, but we are wanting it to be quite far forward-ish like this. You can let that dodge back some. Again, it's as if he's coming to a standstill there. You see that if we were slowing him down to a standstill, that's starting to look very natural. But to counter that, what we're going to do is start having him come down here. So he's coming down considerably lower as he's working into that. He's even starting his drop here slightly. Come to his spine. By this point, he's going to have squitted that rear end down some there, perhaps coming out of a raised one like this. You see what we're now getting? We're getting that little crouch, that little anticipation before the move. You can see that little bob that he of course does with his hind quarter there, just dodges up and then drops it down, so you get that sort of little anticipation before the anticipation as well. What we now do is begin the launch. So let's jump ahead, let's say 10 frames for now. Of course we can have a look at the timing afterwards and see how it appears, and we'll get ourselves into the launch pose. What we want to do is just keep both of those rear feet mainly on the ground, still keep him quite low. We don't want to lift him up too much at this point. And what we want is for these front feet to be beginning their lift off. So we're going to hold this left front foot there. By this point it will have come right up. We'll knock back, key there, and 3 frames before a little hold key for the reverse foot, so that of course at this point we can really start tipping it forwards. And we are very much into the passing pose of the run here, which has him with his foot right up like this. Dodge it forward some like that. There we go. Okay, very slow. We are going to want to speed that up, but you can see how he's starting to go into a little launch there. So we're getting the right action and the right shaping, even if our timing is currently a little out of whack. We're not going to worry too much at this stage about the timing issue. We are going to worry more about our actual key poses, making sure that we're actually getting the, the shape of the character right for what he's doing. And we're also not going to dirty it up too much with in-betweens as we go, because that'll make then, fixing the timing much easier. So I see one little thing that I want to do to help with this shaping, and that's to just synchronize up the back feet a little bit more. So we've got that left foot steps in there, contacts here. Then as it does, I'm going to take the right foot and just on 5 frames, let's say for now, bring it forward somewhat like that, so it's really getting ready for this pounce. So we reach the point where he's on the up there. We'll key his foot controller for the right side at that point, so it's there where he reaches the up, which is here. We've got that brought forward, so it's just about to do the lift off. We'll take the spine and have it sunk just a little bit more at this stage, so you can see he's really starting to develop this action line of lift. Then we'll jump forward, let's say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we'll get him into the next main position. So we bring him forwards like this. We get this front left foot, which is now going to be coming into contact. Reset the position of the foot controller there so that we can get that out in front of him where it wants to be. So it's really sort of gripping and grabbing the ground at this point. This leg, let's go back to where it had to hold, which was right here at 183, so we'll key the hold for it there, and at this contact point there. This is now coming forward, ready to make its contact, so we'll reset its foot controller as well, some there. Bringing it out ahead like this, because it's going to make contact slightly in front of this foot. Both of these rear legs now want to be off the ground. Let's key a hold for them here at 185, shall we? They will leave the ground at ever so slightly different moments, but again, that's a timing adjustment that we'll make shortly. So bring that up, extended back like this, and we pitch the actual foot itself forwards. In fact, it doesn't really need to have come that far at all. We can potentially have it still holding here. Let's get the other one, come back to there, perhaps a little sooner. Here we'll have that foot holding at 183 again. Now we've come to the point where that is really stretching out. It should probably have had its last hold therefore at this point rather than at this one, so that's fine. We've got this twist on the body and spine at the minute. I'm just going to undo that. Obviously there'll be less of that whilst he's running. Since he's not slinking side to side anymore, he's galloping forwards, his spine will straighten out, so let's just fix that at this point. Oh, we forgot to put a hold in for that there, so let's just reset it at that point. Can of course come up sooner there as he's sort of, readying his leg there to get his bounce on. Right, we're going to start to go a little swifter, so I'm going to say, just for say's sake right now, 1, 2, 3, 4 frames. This will be the contact point for this right front leg. So we bring him over. We want the left front leg to be more or less beneath him. Pose something like that. This is the point when the right front leg makes ground contact. Both of his rear legs have by this point long left the ground, and he's tucking them up and behind him now as he moves, so we need to just adjust the foot controls back there. Let's just get them momentarily back to 0 on the Z. Let's get his spine pivoting up because he now needs to lift his rear end in order to make room for his rear legs to pass beneath him. Bring those forward to about this place here. He's bringing his knees right up So doing this and tipping his toes down, so like this. Now we see we're breaking now into the run. We can see it very clearly there, the difference. Of course we see the transition. There we go. That's our little transition from walk to run. It's a little overslowed. I need to speed it up some, but our main chunk there is looking pretty good. So we're coming out of the walk cycle into the run cycle. Let's give it a little playback. Yeah, way too slow. He's going in slow motion past that point, so we'll certainly sort that. But otherwise we can see that in terms of the shape and the posing and the timings between the parts, even though they're going too slowly, the timings between the parts are working out. And also, of course, that little dip that he does before launching, well, that needs a little bit of work, but that's okay. Again, that's largely in between stuff. So before I actually go in and start, fiddling with such timings, I think that the distance he's traveling is good. It's just, of course, he's doing it too slowly. I don't need him to move further forward. I'm not going to adjust his, time taken to move by adjusting the distance that he moves, keeping the same timing but over a greater distance, because that would be inappropriate. Coming out of his walk, coming from a slower start, his initial bound isn't going to be that long. So, looking at it here, when you just scrub it where you can sort of ignore the timing a bit, of course, the actual spacing, the amount of space that he covers, the amount of distance he covers does look pretty good. So we're going to leave the timing for the minute and just figure out, the remainder of this cycle to bring him back into a solid turnover of his run, and then we'll tweak the times. So next pose that I want to get to is going to be the breakdown where this foot here has left the ground, and that one is at the passing position. So I'm just going to go along with my 4-frame cycle here, which really is too slow. That's proper slow motion, but we'll bring him up like that. This trailing foot will have left the ground by this point. That will probably be the last point at which it's actually on the ground, so I am going to just put a hold for it there. Then we bring it up. That will need to change, but I'll work on that afterwards. And we basically just tip his front paw forwards like this for it having left the ground there, something like that. Perhaps we can have it a bit further back still. That's fine. The rear feet at this point are then coming right forwards. I'm just going to reset the foot controller for this side, and of course reset the rotation to turn his toes back. This is just coming in for a landing, and it's going to be doing so perhaps a little further back because it's sort of still carrying. It's not ready to touch down just yet, so something like that. We can still have a bit of rotation on the toe. Of course, these front limbs aren't twinned and in sync with one another, and neither are the back limbs. Their initial liftoff was, but at this point this one is still trailing behind. So we've still got that same sort of mechanic that we had in the run cycle, where limbs are running in opposition side to side and front to rear. There's just a much quicker changeover, and the limbs are starting to approach more of a synchronicity, but still not completely synchronous with one another. That would be wrong. And we can also have by this point his knee on that side starting to come up as well, because he's pulling his leg forward. So we can see very clearly there the bound that he's doing, and of course the legs pulling forward ready to do the next catch and lift off action that we're going to desire here. So far we're working out pretty well. Let us continue on into the next position. That's going to be the one where all 4 feet are off the ground. That's going to be his moment of flight. So again, I'm just going to go the 1, 2, 3, 4. Again, far too slow, but it's okay. Bring him out, of course, this far. We're looking at the extension of the limb here, so as we see that it should be properly pulled off the ground by now. We're going to say that it completely leaves the ground at this point. And so 1, 2, it will be up somewhere. Come back there, grab the foot IK, come 2 back there, come 2 forward. Of course, it's rolling off the ground here, and 1, 2 more. Let's just go around and look at him from the other side because it'll be easier. We can see that his leg here is in proper flight by this point. Should probably even be turned right back, something like this, so as the foot's got real back flick action on it, so as we can take it something like this. There we go. Let's bring that back up. Grab, of course, the other side front foot there. Largely the same, but a little bit ahead of this other one. So coming up there, getting ready to do its reach forward to the next point. Yep. The rear feet, meanwhile, this one's right up here, getting ready to make its contact, or just getting ready to reach down for the ground and do its little impact. It's starting to extend like this. This one, pretty much the same. Flatten the toe back off there. Just allow it to come back down like that, so as it's also coming forwards. Again, trailing ever so slightly behind its neighbour or its twin, its pair, what have you. You can still have the toe pitched down somewhat. So there we are. There's the gallop. You'll notice, of course, we haven't been moving the chest up and down at this point. We will do, but not so immediately. Let's just get this worked out first, then we can work in the detail. So next I'm going to go another 1, 2, 3, 4, again far too slow, but still this guy has now made proper ground contact. He's of course still shifting forwards. Let's just check the rate, because of course we want him more or less moving at a constant forward rate, so something like that. Perhaps of course starting to speed up because he has been coming from a walk into this, so that's okay. So that means that this contacting one will actually want to be out here, more like. This other rear foot now really coming in, ready for its contact. These two front feet still very much being carried, ready to extend forwards as and when they need to. Adjust the angle on the actual wrist there so it's not quite so harsh. There they are, they're still up. There we go, we're really breaking into our run now. So let's jump to the next pose. Again, I'm going to keep my 4 frames spacing here, and that's going to be the contact point of the next rear leg. So we pull it till his hip here is right over the foot of the currently contacted leg. So we get the currently trailing rear leg here. We take it, we pop it down upon the ground, and we set it in front. So there we go. It is also reaching into its contact like this. Plop, plop. See, the 2 feet contact. Bang, bang. Bang, bang. There we go. At this point of contact there, this leading front foot is now really starting to make its move forward, beginning to make its reach. So a little bit of turn on it, not a huge amount, like that. It's starting to come right up forwards like this, whilst the other one is tucked up still. Coming around here on the flip side, just trailing along behind like this, still quite tight. We then come back, so another 1, 2, 3, 4, move him out, and that's going to be the lift-off pose, or the final little time of contact, the pose last before lift-off of this leading rear leg. This leading foot by now is coming right out, just about ready to catch the ground, and then a further 1, 2, 3, 4, and this right side rear leg has got to its final contact point, whilst our leading front leg here is now making full contact, come into its contact position here. That means that this previously trailing rear leg, that was of course going to be wanting a hold there, so by this point it is really trailing back behind. We can put tip on the foot there like that. There we are, it's in a proper trail. That of course is a hold key for the other rear leg, whilst the other front limb here has by this point of course now just come into its reaching forward time, so it's going to be getting ready to contact on the next position, so it's now reaching out ahead, getting ready for its contact point. A pose of course which we've already seen. It was our pose back here on frame 189 essentially. So there we go, very slow and floaty at the minute, but that is, as you can see, the run cycle. We've got the mechanics of the leg movements all taking place there. That is indeed what we are after and looking for. So all we need to do is of course, work the timings and some of the dynamics to make it more as it should be. This is straightforward enough, though it does require a little bit of, care and attention here. So first of all, let's deal with this whole initial liftoff there. Okay, so I'm going to grab the root so as I can see where my frames really are occurring. Okay, so we took 10 frames to get to this point. Clearly that's way too slow. So let's grab all of his controls. Now we can see that actually something has a keyframe just before that point, before the 10 there. Let's just have a little peek and see precisely what it is. Aha, okay, it's one of the reverse foot controls there. Yeah, so I'm just going to nudge that over by one there. We see that also it's got a frame back here. So that's one of the lift-off points going in there. Let's have a look at our root. We want that to come back, let's say, probably a full 5 frames, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which would put it on 78. We can see that, yeah, there's keys for a couple of things here on 78. So let's just roll that back 1 frame. Not necessarily because that's where it belongs, but just to keep it out of our way. Then if we select everything, we'll be able to go from frame 83 here, select all of those keys, drag that back, so frame 83 is now at 78. Okay, there, you see we've got a much quicker spring. If we see it in playback, oh yeah, that's much better. Let me just deselect all of those controls as we can see it a bit more cleanly. That's better. That is a substantially better initial spring, so that 5 frame timing there is good. I then came out 6 frames to the next, so obviously that doesn't want to be 6 frames at all. Again, we've got something with a frame ever so slightly before. Let's just see what that is. It's probably going to be one of these foot controls again. It is in fact the IK goal there for the trailing leg. But all I'm actually wanting to do is to bring everything back 2 frames, and we can see I've got space to do that. So we go back 1, 2. Okay, so that's good. Again, yep, speed is looking better. Now this is where we get into our 4 frame, 4 frame, 4 frame, run part. Let's just have a look so as we can see how it is actually playing at the present. I suspect, yeah, still too slow. So of course that's going to want to speed up, possibly quite notably. So let's see where we're wanting that to come then. So we've got that, which we reduced to 5 frames. That's where we reduced to 4. So it's the stuff from here onwards. And I think it's going to be a reduction to 3. So let's make sure that we grab the root. That just lets me see these frames here. So we're going to take all of that there, move them back 1. We'll then take all of these here. Obviously that there at 4, that is the next root keyed frame. So move them back 1, come to the next root keyed frame, take all of those guys, move them back 1, and basically we're just shrinking that 4 frame cycle each time down to or that 4 frame spacing down to a 3 frame spacing, and then we can see if that's enough or if it needs to go quicker still. Oh no, I think actually that might be pretty good. Let's take a good look at that. See it? Plop, plop. Yep, I'm not so unhappy with that. It's obviously not, a super fast sprinty run. And at the moment, part of what's making it look slow, of course, is the fact that we've just, got this flat movement on the root. The entire body is just floating along. There's not really much action going on in the spine. But if we actually look at the rate at which the feet are turning over, then that's pretty good. So that's the timing that we're going to stick with. And now we can start laying in, all of the detail that will make that come alive and make it look like it's faster than it is. You could go down to a 2 frame spacing on all of these, little key points, if you like. That would give you a really, really fast run. And that certainly wouldn't be unrealistic. So, to that extent, it's sort of up to you how fast you want to go. With that in mind, in fact, I do find that as I watch this back over and over, that perhaps something a little bit faster acting wouldn't be entirely that bad a thing. There's a good way that you can have a check of such things, especially, when you're in the midst of an animation like this, rather than just watching it over and over, and that's to watch the specific piece of it. So if I say that I'm going to look at This frame here, 182, that's where this leading front foot makes its contact point. And then the next such contact point is of course out here, that's at frame 203. So I'm going to do 182 to 202 like this, just centralise in there so as I sort of track with him. I'm just going to watch it back, and this plays, you know, like a single cycle sort of. And to be honest, it still does look a little bit slow motion. So what I think I am going to do is I am going to speed him up. However, I'm going to roll into that speed up, which, if you think about it, isn't a bad idea here, because of course he's coming out of the walk and he's breaking into the run. So perhaps the first bit of that run, as he just initially sort of goes into it, that probably could be a, good place to have it be a bit slower in this sort of 4-frame sequence here. But of course then, as he starts to get a move on, he would really want to start to speed up, and we'll bring him back down to a 3-frame cycle. And I think the point at which I'm going to make the changeover is going to be here, when is pretty much as he comes out of that first leap and into the first pull down, possibly actually just coming out of it there. So of course his front legs, as they grip the floor and grab and give him that push, he gets, a little extra bit of a bump out of that. So it's going to be 191 onwards that I'm going to be shrinking this all by. So let's have a look. Again, I've got something there at 1 frame beforehand. Let me just check off which item that was. Okay, it's one of these hand items, so since that's really going to be unnecessary, I can just get rid of that. Still have something else there. Aha, it's one of these feet keys here. Is that all? I've got both rear feet keyed there, the 190, so let's get rid of both of those keys. Got one on this foot as well. Why is that? Well, that's because that's the foot leaving point, so I'm actually going to bring that back in time 1 rather than get rid of it. And with that, we grab the keys, move them back just by 1 there, and of course we come grab the next bunch, move them back by 1, next bunch back by 1, and so on, just so as we can press all of those little 4-frame spaces or 4-frame timings down to 3-frame timing. And let's have a look at what we get there. So he's still going, and he starts to pick up a bit of speed there, which is pretty good. Yep, so let's just have a look at how that plays in. Comes off the walk into the run. He starts to speed up there. Again, that seems like at the minute he's sort of lurching a bit out of the 4 into the 3-frame. And if you think about it, it is quite a jump, of course. It's a 25% increase in speed that he's got going on there. But even though it looks a bit weird at the moment, we will be able to do something about that with the spline action. And also some of this is, of course, coming off of the fact that even though we've reduced the time, the distance has stayed the same, which is of course why he's speeding up. But what we can do is we can come out, say, to this frame here, grab all of these major parts, the root, and of course the 4 main leg IK goals, open the graph editor here and grab all of their Z positions, find where they all there are at this frame, and we can just start to scooch them back just a little bit. So of course that means that the jump of acceleration at this point is ever so slightly less, whilst then of course starting to pick up. Also take the root position here at that 188 frame and let that move just a little bit forward, so of course that shows his body starting to accelerate a little bit quicker, and that smooths out, at least it should smooth out, our transition to the different speed. There we go, that's a more straight state of acceleration there. So he's starting off walking, then he breaks into the run, and then quickly, of course, as he starts moving, really starts to speed up, so that's a lot better. Now, something that we want to look for, because some of our adjustments there might have just offset a couple of things, so let's just check the key positions in all our main parts. Yeah, we've messed up something with the foot controller here. I think that's just something I forgot to hold in place before, so I can take a copy of its pose there, and I think I really want to paste it right down here. In fact, I may well just move that a frame later like this, and then really bring that frame up, that whole frame up. Oh no, that's just a little too far. You see it's kind of harshly bent there, so let's push it back one. There, that's more like it. I've also got a bit of over bend in the wrist, so let's make sure that we lift that up there. Doesn't need to be quite so far tipped, I don't think. That's a bit more natural like that. There we go. So that's all looking as it should be. This isn't quite right. That should be flat. At this point we want it to have started to tip. Again, I don't think that's something that's gone wrong with our moving the frames. That's just something that we didn't quite key properly earlier. There we go, all looking pretty good. This rear leg coming in looks to be overextended. I'm not going to worry about that at the minute because of course I haven't animated the spine and butt curvature into the run, and at the point when he pulls his back legs forward to make the catch there, his butt will tuck in, so that should handle some of that. So even though it looks a little weird at this stage, we don't need to worry about it so much. What I think perhaps I do worry about a little more is what's happening with these rear legs there. As they come off and through, they sort of twitch about a little bit. I'm going to go back to just looking at the actual run sequence itself, which should now be here. Yeah, you see the rear legs there seem to be doing a little click, and I don't mean the click of the butt punching down just there, but I mean as they're swinging forwards, they definitely seem to be doing a little click, which is basically just the amount of in-between keys that we've set here. It's not perfectly smooth. We could deal with that with splines and so forth, but actually, because they are just in open flight, essentially, there's going to be a more simple way to deal with them, and that's going to be just to erase some of the unnecessary keyframes. So let's see where they are. We've got them there, and they come off the ground. So something was last keyed there at frame 182. That frame 185 looks good. I think it's really, it's what I do there, because of course this one leg is quite tucked under, but then as he moves forward, that leg moves back out, and then it starts to move in again. So what I'm going to do is first of all take a look at this, because that amount of press there really needs to be stronger, like this. I'll also take that hold key for the foot. I'm going to push it forward one, so that's holding in place that little bit longer. And this silly key here for that foot, I'm just going to plain delete. Make sure that I have that going, and it's starting to look better. Something weird is going on this side. What is it? We are quite overextended there, so he should be holding there, but by this point that should just need to drag forward a little bit. Yep, something like that. Okay, so we do need sort of an extra key just in the lift off. That's fine. And I'm also going to trail it back more here. That's where I really want to be making that adjustment, is there. So of course that left leg is the one that's coming forward first, and this right one has a little more time in it. Let's delete that key in the middle there for his foot controller. Let's also lose that one. See if that sort of smooths us across a little bit. I do believe that is better. Yeah, that's definitely coming in better time. It looks a lot smoother. So okay, good. We can be happy with that. So then, let's work on some of these details, like the bend of the spine and the flex of the butt and all of that. Obviously we've got that initial down and tip there. So let's grab that spine controller. I've obviously got a bunch of keys here which are just doing nothing. So let's get rid of all of those. Okay, so he comes down, butt starts to dip. This point, say the 178 indeed, which is where I just deleted a key from, but never mind. We want it really quite dipped. Good. Till this point where we've really pressed it out. So he's, elongating himself on the push, pushing not just with his legs, but with his whole body there. Wonderful. At this high, as the legs are tucking under, the butt needs to come up. That comes scooting up in the air. He does so slightly quicker than I've got it doing so there. So let's just bring it back to here. Holds pretty high, probably until about here. We get a little hold in it. Of course, we see where that leg was very much overextended, but of course this one's quite overextended there. So we'll put the butt coming down right between the two of them. There we go. And then of course we'll be going back for another large extension like this to push off. Of course, because we brought that butt down, we see that that's created some problems in the posing that we just had on the little IK foot controllers there. So we can take care of that, see where the main problem is. There's a problem with it here. That wants to be lifted more. It's fine. It's come to before ground so we can see it from this angle. Okay, that's still pretty much all right. Bring it like this. Dodge it back a bit there. Okay, that's fine. Check the other one. Okay, that one seems to be doing all right. It's definitely not staying flat long enough. I think it should be staying flat up until here. So I need a little hold like that. Yep. So there we go. There's that. Now the root, of course, that needs to bounce up and down. So there, of course, we do have a lift as he comes out of the initial spring. Get to here, that's about right. So we come down here, then we drop him down like this. This leg has a key there. We can probably drop that down slightly as well. We could raise the butt up instead some more at this point if we wanted, but either will really do. As we come here, elevated from where we were because his arms have pushed up, but we are still slightly down. Let's just make sure, yeah, we are indeed somewhat elevated. This arm is now a little weird. That's a single keyframe there. I can possibly take that out. Let's see. Yep, I think that was a good choice. Have a look at these root keys. Again, he'll be slightly down by this point. And those front feet, adjust their position to compensate. There we go. Let's have a look at that root position. Yep, so there we are. He's still down, taking that weight. Of course, as he springs up on his back legs, starts to come up again. And there we go. Double check the whole cycle. There, we see that we're getting a pretty decent sort of little bounce action going on in him. Obviously you're not seeing the root move up and down too much because I'm centered on the head, which is obviously going with the root there. But we do see that his run is looking pretty good and well timed. Certainly the action that we've got bouncing in the spine, the little curve that we're putting into the spine, is working out quite nicely there as well. So let's get on with putting some of the other details into this motion then. And I think I just realised that when we were just speeding him up before, when we were doing that, secondary bit of acceleration once he really gets into the run, I was saying going from 4 to 3 for the spacing of key times, didn't I? Of course, we already did that, went from 4 to 3, which was our initial, and then we've sped it up more, so we took those 3s down to 2 spacings. So sorry about that, in case that confused you at all. Anyhow, let's grab hold of his neck controller. What we should probably do is have his neck make a nice little dip somewhere. I'm not going to need these frames there. So we'll have his neck start to come down like this as he's in his initial, crouch, ready to launch. Perhaps that one's not needed. This is going to be too long now. Or perhaps not. That's not a bad smooth through there. So we get him to the contact point, bring his neck up because he's been thrusting himself forwards like this, and of course the previous was the down. So he goes like this. Yep. We can just run ahead if we want to where he's making that next contact. Just key the neck in that same place, may as well. During the flight frame, we keep his neck up. And actually, with that said, perhaps we have these backwards. Perhaps this one should be pressing down as he pushes his body. Of course, that would be pressed down again over here. Does that? Yep, that's actually more correct. Sorry, I had that the wrong way round the first time. So that's down. So it's down to up to down like this, which consequently means this frame here where he's crouching, that should be an up as well, because that's sort of analogous to his flight position, if you will. You know, that's the bringing the limbs together, ready for the bound. Yep, so there we see the head is going along nicely in the run cycle there. Only takes a couple of frames to have it in. That's pretty good. And this here perhaps shouldn't be quite so low because it's now doing a funny little, or rather it was doing a funny little click as it came out of that previous key. There we go. So we just smooth out the position on that a bit, or the rotation on it I should say, to make that nice smoother transition as he comes down there. Smashing. So have we got everything? I do believe we have. I just want to look at, I noticed one other little thing, which is of course that where after he steps down and he brings this foot here forwards, that's currently just sliding. So once he contacts, let's just create a key for that, the foot controller. Let's just have a little 1, 2, just to give that a slight lift and a little tilt. So there we go, get something more like that. And also let's look around it from the other side just as we can see it. That knee is sunk too far down, so of course let's just pull it up at that point. He's really wanting to get, use the thigh muscles to spring, obviously. So we need to keep that nice and clean there. We can put some more extension on it in the mid there. That's fine. We can possibly do something similar here. So there we go, really starting to push the leg there. That gives a smoother takeoff for those legs, so that's good. Let's have a little look from here. Yep, still looking good. So I think that we're getting our run cycle down nicely. So all we want to do now really is just go repeating this cycle, further on. At present we can't do a straight little copy paste or anything, because obviously we've got this shifting cycle that's starting out slower and starting to speed up, so it's a transitional cycle rather than a clean pure cycle. What I do have though is I have keyframes for all of his parts here on the last frame, the root, each foot, the neck and so on. So what I'm going to do is just select all of those controls. Let's think about where we want them to be in time. So we're going to be doing 2s, aren't we? So this would be the same contact, then there'd be 2, then there'd be 2, so that's 4, it'd be 6, 8, 10, 12 and 14 back to the same contact. So let's go ahead, 14 frames, create a key for all of those, and let's get obviously just those top items, which are of course the main leg goals here and also the root, and let's just drag them all forwards, get them roughly spaced out by the correct amount. Obviously without the in-between animation it's hard to see if we're pacing it right, so we just sort of play it back as it is and just see if the general momentum on the body there looks about correct. Or perhaps an easier way is just to look at the Z position here on the root itself, and here we see the Z position curve for this. Of course there's the acceleration, and we see that so that is broadly linear in terms of the movement that we're getting at this point. Where do we look? Where does he actually switch and change into that 2 frame timing rather than 3? Of course it was over his flight there, so really we're looking down this line, and if anything I think what we want to do is come just a little bit further forwards, maybe slowed down just a little bit by that. So keeping our graph open, I think something about there is more or less in keeping with the speed, the total speed for the cycle that we're after. Just take another peek at that, playing back to see how it looks. I think that that's about right. So he continues to slide forward at the same rate as he has been moving, more or less. Okay, so now we can begin to tween this clean cycle. So let's find points where we've got actual fixed frames for things. We want to keep contact, right? So we've got a frame there for the root, which is obviously the same as the contact frame for this front leg. Both of those rear leg goals there have keyframes at this point as well, but this contact leg doesn't because it's still on the ground. Its holding frame is a bit later. That's okay. So we can select all of those, select the root. Neck doesn't have a keyframe there, neither does the spine. It has one a moment later. So we just want these controllers. Let's have a look at the little IK foot controllers. That one has a keyframe there. This one does not. This one does. And this guy here does as well. So we're just going to use the old animation toolbox here. We will copy that pose there for those items. Come here, go 1, 2 frames ahead. Paste that pose. Obviously that shuffles it back to where it was. That's okay. Worry not. Let's have a look back at when that foot lifts off, when its hold is. So there's our, front contacted foot. And we see that that holds. That's the contact frame there. So that would be 2. So it doesn't hold for the full 2. It rather holds for 1 beyond that. So, okay, so there's its contact. Copy its pose. 1, 2, 3 later. We paste it. Then we get all of these items, or all of these top level items that we pasted the pose in for and shuffled it back, and we just shuffle them forward like this. Okay, let's go back and compare what it should look like. So he contacted here, and boom, that's the second contact. So this first contacted foot is pretty much right beneath the shoulder there. So let's get that so as it's equal here. Yep, that should look like that. So there's our first 2. So then let's look at this newly contacted foot there. Let's go back across it. So it contacted there, then the next root key, that's 1, 2, 3. So of course translating to 2. That was 1 frame after. So once again, this will be copied, 1, 2, 3 later, pasted. We now come back to this point, jump ahead to the next keyframe on the root, see what else we've got here with keyframes on the same frame. Just that one rear leg, one of these reverse foot controls, also one of the other reverse foot controls, and of course the root there. So let's copy that pose, come out here, 1, 2 ahead, let's paste it. And once again, let's grab the top level items, which in this case is just the root and that one leg there, and let's drag them forward to position. Let's go and reference whereabouts he is. He should again have the shoulder over that in contact foot, and that would be more or less where he should be. So there we go, once again, something like that. So let's look at the next point, which would be his in-flight position. We can see that foot controls and root and neck and all of the actual main foot goals, they've all got a keyframe here during the in-flight pose, but not the spine. That one didn't have a key. It's okay. So we're going to copy that pose, come out here again, go 1, 2 forwards, paste it again, grab those top level control items, the IK goals and the root, and shuffle them all forwards. Let's see where we were. Okay, so we were there. Okay, come a bit far forwards. Let's bring your back, and there we go. Okay, maybe still a little far forwards. Let's just look at the timing. We can roll through it. Back a scotch, back a bit still. There we go, that's more like it. Since we've now of course reached the flight position, if we look at his, first bit of cycle, then, once he gets there, we've broken into the 2-frame step part of the cycle. So really there's no need to actually go through doing this slightly laborious copying and pasting of poses at this point. We can actually just do the whole motion. So I'm just going to select all of the controllers here at that last frame that we set and just delete all of that there. I'm then going to check what we've got from the flight. So flight was here at 190, and that leads through to contact of the first leg here at 198, 8 frames later. So what I'm going to do is switch to motion mode. I'm going to copy 190 to 198, click OK, come out to where we were in flight here, and just click paste. Obviously that shuffles him all back there. So let's find that flight position again. That's here. So obviously he's come forward and then he jumps back. So of course it's pasted in place, original place. So we'll get the top level items, of course the root and the 4 IK leg goals there. We'll bring up the graph editor, get all of the Z positions for those 4 guys here. There we are, here's the chunk that we can see, and so quite simply just bring that all back down like this. We can of course see, the lines that are occurring up here in the previous part of that, so we just sort of drag it down till it looks broadly correct, and then we can just go out here to our viewport and actually watch it, see how it actually looks in playback. And there the timing, the speed and all of that looks good, so I think I've got this in pretty much the correct place. The rate at which he's all moving forward there is good, so grand. That's given us a full clean repeat cycle there. So no doubt we will have come in with a couple of errors along the way doing all of this. It is to be expected, so let's see what and where. At this point where he's pushing off the back foot at the end of that first cycle, I've got the contact foot hitting the ground a bit early, so it slides. That should of course be reaching out like this, so that's good. Of course we can see that error has been replicated from our copying pasting, so let's fix it here as well. Otherwise any of the main problems will be occurring where we did the pose copy paste stuff, but for the most part actually I think that has worked out pretty well. Some of our spine animation is missing, which is why these feet appear to be up too high, so let's sort that out. Okay, so we've got the push off and the butt is bent down. We get into the lift there, which is just after this starts to leave the ground, this first front contacting foot. That's where his spine is up. It sort of stays up, holds up before coming down as he contacts. So the butt is down as he contacts, still down as he's thrusting off there, pushing off. That's where it wants to be up, so raise his butt up like that, and that's it. That's pretty much all that we were missing there, so that's good news. Let's check the motion of the neck. Again, that only had a handful of keys, and those are preserved, of course. Those came in with our copy, so that's good. Yeah, and there we go. We've got a decent cycle of the run coming in there. That's really nice. Only thing left to do here then is to work on the tail. And so for that, we're going to be following a very similar story to what we were doing during the walk. It's not going to bounce within a single cycle. It'll bounce over 2 cycles again. First of all, though, we want to have it doing some reaction, of course, when he's coming down, doing his slowdown, because we didn't key anything for that yet. So let's just shift that back a bit so I can come into his walking. So we'll start off with him sort of keeping it down as his, little butt is tipping up there, but as he comes down to here and has started pushing himself forwards, that tail is now elevating itself. I'm also going to work on, whilst I'm here, remember we never sorted out the twist and turn of the body. We still had that coming in from his walk cycle. We worked it out once we got into the run, but not before then. So at this point we're going to have him have turned back straightish like this. See? So there's the weave, and of course we'll just match the tail with that. So got him coming down, tail goes up, he goes for the launch like this. Tail can just extend a little bit as it sort of drags. I've also straightened his body by this point, so there we go. There we go, down and launch. During this bit of flight, up. During the next bit of flight, it's more down. Then, during this contact here, where we've, come down, and that is hit, it tucks down, or it flaps down, and then at the opposing one, here, it flaps up. Okay, so it's a offset 2-cycle cycle. And let me just view it cleanly. There we go. So, we see this same sort of double-spaced wag action taking place there on the tail. It's largely dragging behind, almost as if it's just a passive thing flopping around there. Although, of course, it's really not passive, but it does not fall into a single cycle piece. You can perhaps put a little bit of extra curl onto it if we really want to accentuate that. Or you can also back curl it, if you like this, to give it more flop. In truth, one isn't really any more or less correct than the other. It's sort of one of those things that you can choose for yourself how and where you want it to appear to be flapping. So you can get some doubled action going on it if you like. And there you see tail bounding around as he's bounding. Of course, with all of that done, it is just a matter of more copying and pasting of the motion to repeat the cycle and keep it going over a longer frame range for basically as long as we want to be able to run it, in just the same way as we, copy and paste poses and motions around to repeat things as we go. And so there we have it, our nice run cycle for our pooch. And of course we can come back and just watch the whole thing. So of course he just walks in, there we go, it's all looking pretty nice and smooth and natural, and then he takes off and breaks into the run. It's all very nice looking, very natural in appearance. And so if we give it a watch here, just from perspective or from a camera view, see him going along, we can see that, his movement works out really well. The little transition from the walk into the run works nicely, very natural looking. And we're pretty happy with the motion that we've got going on overall here. It's a good, decent cycle that we've got for him, or a good, decent set of cycles for both the walk and the run. And so from here, what we want to do then, of course, is to go in and start splining things up so as we can actually get, the whole action being even nicer and cleaner and smoother than it is already just on linear keys. So it's pretty straightforward, of course. We've done all of this before. We'll just select all of our controls here, check the TCB there, and do a set curve on all of them, and that converts them very nicely over to TCB splines. We will probably have some slippage going on in there, and indeed we can certainly see the holds for the feet on the ground there. They're slipping around, so of course we'll just do a quick clean, and that gets rid of our extraneous keyframes and also of course fixes the holds. So let's see if we've picked up any errors along the way during that process. We should be pretty good, and indeed, the walk seems to have come off just fine there, and the same with the run, nothing slipping around or misbehaving after all of those adjustments there. And also our animation is now looking considerably smoother. If we check it from an angle here, it's looking very nice indeed. So there we go. If we wanted to, we might, make some little shifts or adjustments of timing here and there. I've just got the head bobbing at this point. Of course, we haven't keyframed the head control at all. That's just on its float. We've only keyframed the neck. And doing that is possibly less than ideal. We really should have some sort of an animation on the actual head itself, just to tie in with the movements on the body and of course the movement in the neck, and also of course give some, sense of direction, at the point where he's coming and crouching down before doing his run. Why is he doing this? Why is he breaking out of the walk and into the run? Maybe he's spotted something, a rabbit or some goodness knows what. He's decided to go off after it. So of course having some direction on the head there to show the thought process going on that's motivating him to move from one kind of motion into another is perfectly agreeable and probably something that you would want to do. But really, for our purposes here and the purpose of, this exercise, this tutorial, we can really consider this animation to be basically finished. So of course, if you're wanting to go and add on little extras like that, it's always good practice to, add more, do a bit of plussing as you go, work in some tweaks or adjustments as you see necessary. But otherwise, there we have it, a good, decent quadruped walk and run cycle, and a bit of transitioning out of one and into the other.